welcome again to the Marty Heiser Show. You know, sometimes when I think about this show, I say, gosh, you know, tonight's show is a little light. We're going to try and, get through it. Tonight's show, however, we are jam-packed with interesting people and interesting topics, and you don't want to go outside. You know why you don't want to go outside? There's a lightning storm going on out there. I heard the report on the radio coming in here. You're going to get zapped by lightning. So you just sit right where you are, whatever in your boxer shorts in your basement eating those cornflakes. You just stay right there and you watch this show for the next hour because you're going to see some interesting things. You're going to hear about Lyme disease and what's going on with Lyme disease, the tick population. We've got some experts here to talk about that. And we also have Bob Burke, Bethel Politics, a spectator sport if there ever was one, Bethel Politics. Bob Burke will be joining us in studio, and he has some interesting things that him and his group has uncovered that's going on in Bethel, and you'll want to watch that. But before I get that, I have some thoughts that I want to share, and I'm going to be as brief as I possibly can. The first one is the general economy. We saw the stock market go down again today. Again, I can't take it anymore. And you're wondering what's going on with the economy. I'm not even going to name politicians. I'm just going to talk policy here. We have Boeing. That's one thing that we still make in this country is wonderful world-class airplanes. They want to open up a plant in South Carolina, but the National Labor Relations Board, under the leadership of the administration in Washington right now, is trying to stop them from building a plant in South Carolina. I could go on because I was just down there visiting my parents, and the best people to talk to is taxi drivers, and they're hurting down there, and they want that plant. BMW built a plant in South Carolina, and it's working out wonderfully for them. We need jobs. We need the National Labor Relations Board to get the heck out of the way and allow them to build that plant in South Carolina. The reason they don't want to, they say it's not fair to unions. The Seattle unions, which are beholden to the current administration in Washington, is trying to put the kibosh on it. But that's just one example. And I could go on, but they tell me I don't have a lot of time because we have this great show. But I could go on about the EPA and what they're doing. As a matter of fact, the only growth industry that we really have right now in the United States is regulators. You want a job? You just graduated from college. As long as this administration's in office, you better get a job with the regulator because they are growing exponentially. It's a good word. Right here, we're talking about people working. There's more working for the federal government than McDonald's, Ford, Disney, and Boeing combined. That is a growth industry. It's going up by 5%, while there's 9.1% unemployment in the United States right now. I don't like the trend. EPA overregulating, I could go on about that. South Carolina, they're not allowing them to build that plant because of some bogus labor relation board issues. Time and time again, the current administration is under the impression that if they tear down the wage payer, that this is going to somehow lift up the wage earner. It's not working. We need change, and I think even the leadership in Washington recognizes that. Because on that little bus, that little dark, blacked-out bus that they have going around the Midwest, they're singing a different tune. I don't know if it's too little, too late. But we will be following that, and that's my thoughts just on my early rant. Now, before we go anywhere else, this is the Marty Heiser Show where you always get the truth. And it's the truth as I see it, but it's the truth nonetheless. We are joined by Jennifer Reed. Jennifer, I want to thank you so much, first of all, for putting up with my rant. And secondly, for joining us. You're the co-chair of, among other things, the co-chair of the Ridgefield Lyme Disease Task Force. And we are also joined by Dave Straight, who, Dave, you head up, what is the organization?
It's the Fairfield County Municipal Deer Management Alliance, and I'm the chairman of that group. And we represent 18 of the 23 towns in Fairfield County. So we have a tremendous following, and we've had a huge impact on Fairfield County, I believe. Okay.
Well, let me ask, just to get the ball rolling, Jennifer, is Lyme disease dissipating and getting better, or is it worse? I have an idea on this, but what are you finding in your organization?
Sure, sure. And just to mention, I also wanted to tell you that I'm also not just involved in the task force, but I'm the community coordinator for the Blast Lyme Prevention Program with the Ridgefield Health Department. Okay. So we're watching this from the advocacy standpoint as well as the health department standpoint. And your question is a good one, Marty. It's not going anywhere. Lyme disease is a serious problem in Connecticut. The numbers are growing. We're seeing more cases every year. And right now we don't really have any reason why we aren't going to predict that that will just continue to be
So
the
if you're
case
going to
in
plot this
Connecticut.
on the graph, I know you have some graphs here. Lyme disease cause cases by month onset in Connecticut. I don't know if we can get a shot of this, but just talk about this.
Sure, just brought along a few graphs. This one I wanted to show folks. This time of year, we're starting to come to the end of summer. Summer is definitely the time when most people are diagnosed with Lyme disease, but we want everyone to know it is a 12-month-of-the-year disease. Don't be fooled by thinking summer's over, we can stop our prevention measures. The BLAST program will be out there talking in the fall just as much as we do in the summer to let people know that they need to do the things that we're recommending. Bathing within 2 hours of outdoor activity, looking themselves over every day for ticks and possible rashes, applying repellents, DEET-based repellents, permethrin for clothing, DEET for exposed skin, spraying the perimeter of the yard, and treating their pets very carefully because pets can carry those ticks into the house. Summer is definitely the highest incidence, but be careful all year round.
Okay, so that's that acronym that stands for?
That's the BLAST acronym. That's the BLAST message. It's a program that we started in Ridgefield in 2008, funded by the state of Connecticut, and now we are taking it all over the state. And,
okay, so lightning round, the B?
The B is to bathe or shower within 2 hours of outdoor activity.
The L?
The L is to look yourself over every day for ticks and rashes.
You know, there's
check
a country
your children.
song
There is.
that says, I want to check you for ticks.
It can be,
no
it can be a fun
might be.
activity, you're right.
So you're using this prevention as a form of initiating romance. Is that overstating it for a family show?
I think that it can be a form of romance. It can be a great way to spend some time with your children. Whatever works for your family,
Actually,
for your...
yeah,
You just couldn't resist.
I'm just saying, I love that song, honey. Let's sing our favorite song. I want to check you for ticks.
Absolutely.
All right, no, but we do it like
Absolutely.
when my kids were young. We talked about this before. We would do a tick check every night when I was tucking them into bed. You know, when they're younger kids. You know, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so forth. But all right, just give me the one-word answer though. B, bathe. L.
Look.
A.
A is to apply repellent.
Apply repellent. S.
Spray the yard.
And T.
Treat your pets.
Treat your pets. Okay, Dave. There's a couple ways to look at this thing. Prevention, which is obviously an important component, but what are you finding in your organization to alleviate this?
So
what's the real answer?
You know how painful this is for me not to talk about politics right now and the economy.
No,
and the stock market.
you wear a lot of hats.
So this may
You
be,
just saw your net worth get crushed today, and you have some opinions on it. But let's stick with the ticks.
So
for now.
this may be the only show that Al is actually going to appreciate my participation in, but we'll but we'll see.
I mean, aren't ticks like apolitical?
Well, that's the thing. They cross party lines. I mean, you know, I'm on the conservative side, and I met with Senator Blumenthal a couple weeks ago. I met with his office again last week, and they're engaged. You know why they're engaged on this? Because their phones are ringing off the hook. My opinion: Lyme disease, tick-related diseases. There are over 15 diseases you can get from ticks. Tick-related diseases may be the biggest political issue in 2012. People think it's the economy, jobs, and all the rest. Let me tell you. People in Fairfield County, on average, are spending about $1,100 per household per year combating high deer densities, Lyme disease, car wrecks, you know, fencing, all the things that are going along with this overabundant deer situation. Now, we have a guest on the phone. I want to frame him up if I can.
Please.
And this is a gentleman I've gotten to know over the course of the past few months. Bob Nyman is a former veteran, and he has been afflicted with Lyme disease, and it's a horrible situation. Let me, I've got two pictures here. Now let me just tell you the courage that Bob has. Over the course of the last 3 years I've been involved in this, every time I come across a person that's suffered from Lyme, they're very private about it. They're not willing to be a face, an actual face associated with Lyme and human suffering for any number of reasons. I'm going to show two pictures here. Rich, if you can zoom in. On the left, what you see, on the right, what you see is Bob Nyman about a year ago. All right? Over here, on the left, you see a picture of Bob today. Bob's about 6'1", and he's down to about 125 pounds. His life has been completely destroyed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to frame it up. I'm going to, just get him. He's on the line right now. And so without further ado, I'll say, Bob, are you there?
Yes, I am, sir. Good evening.
Good.
I'd just like to touch one point real quick. I heard her talk about animals. I live in Windham County, Brooklyn, Connecticut. It is a pandemic here. Horses, canines, humans, my dog is co-infected. My dog just came up with a co-infection called anaplasmosis. She has to be on a malaria drug for a whole year. She's on 3 different types of pills, four pills a day. It's a pandemic. Horses, the horse next door is I have 2 horses that live next door to me. They're blind. I'm going blind. I have so many symptoms it would take me all day to
hey, Bob, if you were going to pick, say, the top 5 or 10 common symptoms of Lyme disease or late-stage Lyme, what would they be?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm in the end game. I have 2 lesions on my brain. The spirochetes drill through every tissue in your body, and they will go the long haul for the juiciest membranes, which is your heart and your brain. I've had 6 seizures. I just had 6 staples in my skull. I fell down. I had a seizure. I just totally blacked out. I lose my equilibrium. It's the medical society. It's actually the CDC who will not acknowledge chronic Lyme disease. What happens is, if a doctor has compassion and wants to treat his patient with long-term antibiotics, which is correct treatment, not this 30 days of doxycycline, what happens is, the doctor treats the patient, the insurance company, money, the insurance company notifies the CDC notifies the medical board calls the physician, revokes, suspends, scrutinizes, harasses. They passed a law called H.R. 6200 in Connecticut a couple years back, just to appease the public, I believe, because nothing changed. The doctors are all still really scared. New Hampshire, just a few months back, passed a similar law.
Hey, Bob?
Yes.
Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it okay if we just hit you with a couple questions real quick? Because we've only got about 5 minutes here.
Bob,
no, that's okay.
We're joined by Jennifer Reed. She's the co-chair of the Lyme Disease Task Force here in Ridgefield in Fairfield County. How long have you been combating this disease?
In 1981, I was painting a house in Lyme, Connecticut.
Wow.
And I got the bullseye rash. I didn't even know what it was until the point where I couldn't walk. My joints hurt so bad. I went to Middlesex Memorial Hospital, and I was given my 30 days of tetracycline. Back then they used tetracycline. Now they use doxycycline. Wrong. This is
okay. Yeah.
Once you have these symptoms, it's too late because you have to catch that tick within 72 hours.
So in 81, they weren't quite as sophisticated as they are now. We have Jennifer Reed with us. Jennifer, you had a question? Because this is probably a worst case scenario for someone with Lyme disease. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Right. I just wanted to ask, have you found any support groups in your area that are helpful? I think it's important for people to know that there's patients out there and places to go to find some kind of guidance in this. We do have a support group in Ridgefield at the Visiting Nurse Association on the 2nd Thursday of each month at noon, and I hope that you found some support like that in your area.
Jennifer, that is my main core for being on this show. It's a pandemic here, and there is no activity online. There are no support groups. There is absolutely nothing. Everyone turns a blind eye, everybody's watching Dancing with the Stars, but they're not facing the facts. I don't know whether it's not politically correct or whatever.
Well, Bob, listen, one benefit of this show, before we're going to have Dave, because I know he has a contact information for you, we're going to get you in touch with a support group, a very active support group that they have in Ridgefield and in this area. And how many people attend, and from how far wide do they come?
Yeah, people come from so far. That's what I was just telling you, Marty, earlier. We get folks from as far away as Hartford and Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York State. It's really unbelievable. We meet once a month at noon because a lot of Lyme folks can't travel at night. They get very fatigued, so we meet during the day. And I'm always amazed.
My vision's gone. I can't drive at night.
Yeah, I'm always amazed.
I live in Brooklyn, which is the far north. I live on the Rhode Island-Massachusetts border. That's why I go to the VA hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. It's only 32 miles away. It's the closest one. You know, traveling to Ridgefield, you know, or Fairfield County, I mean, that's a real haul. We need some activity in Northeast Connecticut. Everyone I know has been infected multiple times, and I don't mean just a couple, 8 times. I just met a lady 3 days ago. 8 times she's been infected. Myself, 8 times. I'm an outdoorsman. I cut all my own firewood. I do a lot of backpacking, or I used to. You know, when I'm in remission, everything's good, but it seems like throughout the decades, there's a remission and a relapse, and each one gets worse. And now this end game, I actually have these dents in my skull, which is called syphilis skull, and it's debilitating. I sit and, you know, and I have mental health issues now because it's almost like I'm bipolar and I'm chronically depressed. Well, of course I'm chronically depressed. My whole life's going down the tubes because of Lyme disease.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Bob, you know, I'd love to have you on for the whole hour. You know, like I said at the start, the courage for you to come on this show and to be the face of Lyme and to open up and be candid. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, I apologize. I rant a lot.
No, not at all.
No, you're terrific.
You're in the right place if you want to rant, Bob. That's all we do around here is rant.
I just felt lousy for so long that I'm mad. I used to be a guy with personality, you know, tell jokes, blah, blah, blah. Now it's just like I'm just not the same person.
Bob, listen.
luck, Bob.
Thank you very much for coming on. I just want you to know you're not alone in this thing. I know, I have a good friend in Dave Straight, and we're going to be back in touch with you.
Thanks.
And we're going to get you at least, so you know, we'll get the information to you about these support groups, and at least you can monitor it, call in by phone. We're going to get this worked out for you. And thanks so much for putting a face to really the ravages of this disease. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Bob. We'll see you.
You have my permission. Use whatever you need to do. And you know, it's you people that are doing me the favor. Just talking to you, just connecting with someone, really, just because you know what? Every Lyme sufferer I know is a shut-in. They're owners.
Bob, we got to go, bud.
See you, brother.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Now, how many cases do you find? I mean, to me, I've had Lyme disease. You know, I was playing golf. I remember it distinctly. Went on vacation the next day. I'm walking up the Capitol steps because we were going down to Disney World or something. Stopped in Washington. My wife saw a tick on the back of my nape of my knee. Pulled it out. I was like, oh, gosh, it's Lyme. And then, sure enough, by the time we were driving back, the 7-week, you know, period that it incubates or what have you, I was hit with flu-like symptoms. We knew exactly what it was, but we were in North Carolina. They didn't know Lyme disease. So we had to call the doctor up there. They filled the prescription. I took the antibiotics and knocked it out, and I'm fine. My son, same thing, round bullseye rash. It was just freaky looking, but when he was a little toddler, took him in, had the antibiotics, knocked it down. This was misdiagnosed initially, and then the first stages of flu-like symptoms happen. But if you don't get it then, those symptoms go away, and then what happens next?
Right. Those symptoms will go away, and also the rash goes away. People should really know that that rash will only stay a short period of time.
Right.
So we recommend folks take a picture of it with your cell phone if you're traveling. Make sure you record it, because if you show that bullseye rash to your physician, that will be a very clear diagnostic indication that Lyme disease is there. And then we hope that your physician gets the, if you have the rash, or if you have the early symptoms and not the rash even, not everybody gets the rash, you will get early diagnosis, early treatment. It makes all the difference.
All right. Okay. What's the final solution about this? How can we eradicate
Okay, here's the deal. You know, what we have to do is we have to make sure, what we have to do is limit the exposure to Lyme disease that kids get. So, okay, here's some quick, I'm going to hammer you with a bunch of facts real quick.
Good.
For starters, the DEP just did an aerial survey this past year, and in 2 years, deer densities in Fairfield County went from 64 to 76 deer per square mile. Newtown has over 100 deer per square mile. We are swimming in deer. Towns that have brought their deer density numbers down to 10 deer per square mile have had Lyme disease drop by 95%. It's that simple. People say, well, what about the other rodents? Well, you know what? In these studies, deer numbers were brought down to 10, Lyme disease dropped by 95%. They did nothing about the rodents, and for 10 years, no ticks showed up on rodents. So, I mean, it's clearly, so you say, well, what's so big about the deer? The fact is, with the deer completes the life cycle of an adult deer tick in order for them to reproduce. 94% of the ticks that were tested in Fairfield County fed on adult deer. It's that simple. Deer are the equation. So now the question is, what do we do about the deer problem? Towns across Fairfield County are waking up saying, we got to get deer numbers down. The DEP holds the key. They hold all the cards. For the past 50 years, the DEP has protected deer and enabled the deer herd to grow. What you have to do is you have to change the game and say, the DEP, you need to protect people, not the deer. You need to find ways for people to get the deer numbers down. An example, why do we have a deer season?
Well, the thinking behind having a deer season is it's not when the deer are having their baby deers and fawning in the spring and so forth, so you want to have the deer season in the fall.
So you get more deer.
You get more
so
deer.
The fact is, for 7 months, 7.5 months out of the year, you can't touch a deer. You touch a deer, you go to jail.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? If
No.
you've got a health problem. Now, I read a report yesterday that said 1 out of 15 people in America have exposure to Lyme disease. That's a huge number
1
if
out
it's
of-
right, 15.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how they calculate that. I haven't dug into the details. That's a big number. But the fact is that 94% of the adult deer ticks fed on deer, you got to get deer numbers down. So here's what we're recommending. I've spent a lot of time with the DEP on this. We're trying to get regulatory relief from the DEP. What we're saying is, private landowners should be able to draw down deer numbers on their property year-round.
Okay, let me say, Jennifer, is that what you're finding too? Is that accurate? Is the real solution just, hey, let's give out more deer permits, let's expand the hunting season, and that'll work?
I don't want to say expand the hunting season, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's really not my area of expertise. I know David's group, does all the research into working with the DEP. And
What is it, Tom Beloit in Ridgefield?
Tom Beloit
that he heads up the deer committee?
Right. He heads up the hunt, and he headed up the committee that studied it in Ridgefield for about 18 months. We had a very extensive study.
And what did
then
they
we had
find?
a town vote. Well, they all agreed that the deer were a major part of the issue, and that it went out to the town with a recommendation from the committee to reduce the deer numbers, and the town voted, and they voted to support that. So we have a hunt in Ridgefield.
Okay, so the other thing to keep in mind is, is the Fairfield County Alliance, we are not trying to encourage recreational sport hunting. Recreational sport hunters have something in common with what we're promoting, but that's not the solution.
Okay.
And the problem is recreational hunters like seeing a lot of deer. They're not there to draw deer numbers down. What towns across Fairfield County are finding is that recreational hunters have become an obstacle rather than a big help. They're more
You're
of a
kidding.
Yeah.
You'd think there would be a synergy there.
Well, you would, but there isn't. So, what we're trying to do is we're trying to promote managed deer programs in towns. And the way you do that is you come up with a town-wide plan. Reading sent a letter to the DEP, and the DEP has agreed to come up with a town-wide plan, thinking that by implementing this plan, they'll get down to 10 to 12 deer per square mile. Now, you need hunters to do that. Hunters can participate in managed programs, but it's not just recreational hunting, where a guy goes out, he's under no obligation to take all the deer he can. He sits there and waits for 3 months to get a big buck. He gets his big buck, and it's a great year for him.
Right.
That's not what this is about. You have to get every single deer that you can to have a chance of getting these deer numbers down.
Okay.
So, what we're encouraging is town-wide plans, organized plans with measurement, tick measurement, deer, taking stock of deer numbers, and getting these deer numbers down. And you can do it. I mean, why can't we use sound reducers? I mean, everybody says, sound suppressors. You see them in movies all the time. Why can't you use those? You're hunting in residential areas. Nobody likes the big bang in their backyard. Why can't you use them? You should be able to use them. Another thing is, why do you have a bow season that starts 2.5 months before the rifle season? It's to give the bow guys a chance. Doesn't make any sense. Rifle and bow should start the same day, go over the entire season.
All right.
I mean, there's just so much that the DEP could do. The DEP has to do a sea change in the way they're thinking.
All right. Two different approaches. We have prevention, which I think both of you would agree that you need to attack this problem from both sides. Both prevention
complex.
and also the culling of the deer herd, I think, is absolutely essential to do. It is a real problem. I mean, Bob was courageous enough to come on the show, but I don't think there's a family watching this show tonight that hasn't been touched by Lyme disease or knows someone that was touched by Lyme disease. In our case, we got lucky because we got it early, and we were able to eradicate the disease, at least in our situation.
And a couple things on testing. Lyme disease testing is, hang on, I think we may have a call here. Bear with me. Who do we have on the line? Do we have a caller?
Go ahead.
Hello. Anyway, so so testing itself is not always conclusive. And if you don't, like you say, if you don't catch it in the early stages, it gets advanced pretty quick. Bob has stage 3. Right. Stage 3 is, I mean, it's a form of syphilis, goes to the brain, it does kill you.
Wow. Caller, are you there? Hello?
He hung up.
Okay. If you want to call in, you should put up the number 438-2003. Jennifer Reed, co-chair, Ridgefield Lyme Disease Task Force, among many other things, including the BLAST program, which again, B?
Bathe.
L?
Look.
A?
Apply.
S?
Spray.
And T.
Treat those pets, yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
thank you so much
You
for
bet.
coming. I really
You bet.
appreciate your work you're
Absolutely.
doing.
Thanks.
And unfortunately, the work continues because this thing is just keep continuing to spread. And Dave, if they want to have more information with your organization,
Go to deeralliance.com and we'll take it from there. You can reach me on deeralliance.com.
Excellent.
Should I do the intro for the...
By all means, you have a special friend that's going to be coming on, and his name is. Oh, you can
There you
introduce
go.
him, and they're setting things up there. So, what are we going to hear from Jerry?
So the person that you're about to hear from is Jerry Cunningham. I've known Jerry Cunningham for years and years, worked with him for years. He's one of the most intelligent guys I've met next to Marty Heiser. And his political perspective is always interesting. Over the course of the last few weeks, every now and again, Warren Buffett pops his head up and says, "Oh, I think I should pay more taxes." Well, you know what? He never gets his paycheck or checkbook out and does anything about it, but he talks about it. But Jerry has a really interesting perspective on that. So what we're going to do is give Jerry 5 minutes here on his analysis of the Warren Buffett hypocrisy, if you will, and then we'll cue up the Bob Burke and go for the last half hour of the show.
All right, without any further ado, Jerry, thank you for coming on, and please share your thoughts.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, in North and South America and ships at sea. No, this is not Walter Winchell, and no, this is not the radio. This is the Marty Heiser Show, the absolute best thing on public access TV. I would call it the best kept secret in America, but that would be Al Gore's show. Excuse me, that would be Keith Olbermann's show on Al Gore TV. Now, for as long as I can remember, the debate regarding taxes and budgets has been about how much should the wealthy pay. Some folks say the wealthy pay up to 70% of the taxes, even though they're only 5% of our population. Others say the wealthy should be paying even more. Now, just this week, billionaire Warren Buffett dropped another turd in the punch bowl by claiming he is undertaxed. That's right, he's undertaxed, and he asked for the government to raise taxes on him and other wealthy people. But here's the problem, and that's why I'm here tonight to share a view with you people. Except for when you die, the government doesn't tax wealth. It really doesn't. It taxes income. Wealth is a lake. Income is a stream. And taxes are a dam designed to divert that income stream from becoming a lake of wealth. So this is why so many truly wealthy people are in favor of higher income taxes. They have their pot of gold and they want to stick it to the guy coming up the ladder. The problem with that is income streams are very variable. They're very unstable. Guys who were knocking it out of the park 2002 to 2007 in the home remodeling business and the contract trades, they were doing great then. Today they're singing for their supper. So income is very unstable. But what I find to be the height of hypocrisy is for the Warren Buffetts of the world to very wealthy people to encourage higher income taxes. Net, 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 in the name of billionaires paying their fair share, what will really happen is that a police officer working overtime who's married to a teacher who works a summer job, they'll get a higher income tax bill because of Warren Buffett's advocacy of higher taxes. There is, however, an alternative approach. If we were to tax, let's say, net worth over $1 billion at 5% a year for the next 10 years, it would serve two purposes. It would raise revenue, and it would also have the Warren Buffetts of the world change their tune faster than an Omaha minute. Finally, in Warren Buffett's much publicized column, he claimed he was writing about how to bring down the deficit, about the overall federal budget. But he spent almost no time talking about spending cuts. How is that? I think at the end of the day, Warren Buffett his staff that cherry-picked income tax data and did the research, they should be paying, they should report that as a campaign contribution in kind, because that's exactly what it was. Mr. Buffett wrote this essay in order to benefit the Obama administration, the Democratic Party. He said virtually nothing about the spending cut side of the argument, which, of course, is the bigger side of the argument. Anyway, I thank Marty and Dave for the opportunity to share my views with you this evening. I promise I will go back on Prozac as soon as the camera's off me, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that. Jerry, I don't know, Dave, how much are we paying Jerry to make these political commentaries?
Well, it's in negotiations.
All right, well, whatever we're paying him, double it, because I want him on every week. Jerry, I really appreciate that. And it is, you know, what is it? Income is a stream and wealth is a pond. And he ain't talking about paying 70% of his pond, which is more like the Pacific Ocean. He's talking about 17% of his income. But, yeah, that always kind of makes me feel bad. Now, we are delighted to be joined by the Honorable Bob Burke and Bob you got to give me help with the last name. Cernick. And Al Robinson is also going to be joining us as well. And we are also, I want to say behind the scenes, if you're noticing things are flowing even better, the direction is wonderful. That's because David Sorrell has joined us once again in the booth, so we're delighted to have that. But Bob, I just want to thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure to be here, Marty. Thank you for the invitation.
You're always welcome here. I find politics and what the goings-on in Bethel endlessly fascinating.
It's a blood sport in our town.
But here's my thought, and you'll tell me why. I'm trying to somehow broach some sort of detente between you and the Republican Party. I was hoping you could come sit right here in this studio, have a group hug, and sing Kumbaya. Is any of that going to happen? Why and why not?
Well, I'm the hierarchy of the Republican Party, Mr. Improta himself. We have several emails where he he hates me. He has disdain for me. He borderlines on what I would call mental illness, but that's his problem.
All right.
You can ask your viewers here tonight to pray for the poor man because he's demonically possessed.
Well, there you have it. You heard it here first on the Marty Heiser Show. There's demonic...
the important thing, in all sincerity, the important thing is I was a Democrat at one point in my life.
Right.
I became a Republican.
Was Ronald Reagan.
And, yeah, very much so. One of my people that I look up to. The whole world has changed. The politics of the world have really changed. But basically, I'm a conservative libertarian. And this Tea Party movement has moved in that direction now. And there's people that like him, there's people that don't like him. So we, some 2 years ago, took the opportunity to register the Connecticut Tea Party name. And because we went to the caucus, I brought 101 people to the caucus. You have a large group of people called the average person in Bethel that has asked me over and over and over to please come back. And I'm not going to disrespect them. Here I am.
All right.
So we'll be on the ballot as the Connecticut Tea Party. And we're running a full slate.
Well, we're also joined by Al Robinson. Al Robinson is the publisher, among other enterprises he's involved with, of Hat City Blog. And I know you have an intimate knowledge of the politics in Bethel. And did you have some questions for our guest?
Bethel's always crazy. It's another one of the silly seasons going on right now. And I'm so happy I'm on the round table again after all this time.
I know, because that's Dave Sorrell. Dave Sorrell is here.
Dave,
Dave, you got to stay. We love you.
I would have dressed up a little more appropriately if I knew I'd be out here.
No, but I like this, because this is like the hard-bitten journalist out on the street getting the truth in the story and here ready to
dodging
support.
the bombs.
No,
Yeah. Here, these are like corporate wannabes. I'm like a painting contractor that comes in, trying to look good. But you're a man of the people.
No,
what have you found out about this guy? What the heck's going on in
I'm just
Bethel?
a man who is hot, because it's hot in this place.
It is.
But,
opinions, a lot of
Let's
hot
go
air.
over a couple of things. Before we talk about your running for first selectman, there's a few things that came up in the news I want to get your comments on. The first thing immediately is obviously the water tower decision that was done. Let me get your opinion on that decision. And
well, that's a very critical thing for Bethel. You must understand that Bethel, since 1877, has owned that land in Danbury. It really should have been incorporated into the town of Bethel. Bethel was incorporated in 1855. It was incorporated again with an additional piece, which is the Bethpage section, reservoir section, and all of it didn't get incorporated into Bethel. But what really should be done is that part of Danbury should be incorporated into the square miles of Bethel and be part of the corporation of Bethel. That tower it's a major necessity for fire protection and water and public health. It needs to go up there, and it needs to go in. Why they took it to the court like they did, I don't know. The Department of Public Health is actually the way it needed to go. I acquired that grant. Your whole section of Bethpage had a transite water system, water supply system in it, the piping, a 12-inch line. That blew up under my watch, and we had to change that to the tune of $1 million. And that's a major emergency that happened. The water tower that is on Hickok Avenue is 30 feet too low. It's a 1.5 million gallon tank, and since it's been put in, it has never worked. If you release water from that tank at this point, you are going to kill the Bethel water system. You're looking at Legionnaire's disease could be in that, a lot of things. I decommissioned that tank when I was in office.
Well, seeing we've been talking about this tower for a number of years. I recall the last time you were on this show as the first selectman, we were talking about the water tower.
Yes.
It seems we're still talking about this. We're still talking about it. What would you do if you were in office right now? Yeah, we went to the court system. It seemed like it ruled in behalf of the city of Danbury. What would you do right now in order to make some common ground so we can get some agreement between the town of Bethel and the city of Danbury and
well, somebody has to talk to the mayor of Danbury, and it's got to be the first selectman of the town of Bethel. And it should be a public dialogue. That's what it should be. You guys should come in and film it, because that needs to happen, and the state of Connecticut and the federal government must get involved in that too. Right. And that's where I would push it if I was in office. That's imperative for the people of Bethel.
Okay. Now, another thing that came up recently...
Do you realize Danbury's out of water? Their reserve of water, they don't have enough. They're at capacity. Bethel, fortunately, has a huge aquifer.
Well, hopefully hopefully we'll get some common ground between the two municipalities and come to some type of agreement, because again, this has been going on for a number of years. It seemed like there's no end in sight with this situation. But I want to go into another matter that came up in the Bethel patch back in July. It seemed that the Board of Finance came out and they said that they found, they discovered about $3 million that was transferred out of the town's general fund without the board's approval. And they said this went back beyond several administrations. So since it's several administrations, that would cover you as well as other past first selectmen. Okay. Do you have any comment in regards to this?
You want to be very clear on that, because you have people without knowledge that are commenting on this, and they're doing it on blogs. Okay. Bloggers...
Well, we have you here, so let's
bloggers get real nasty, and they call you all kinds of things, to the point of sickness sometimes.
Well, the Bethel patch recently, their comments have been a little over the line, but we have you here.
I actually put it on my computer, and it started smoking.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable when I started reading it. It was like I had to switch back to AOL.
Let me explain something.
This has been a big story.
If Moses was alive today, false witness would be a huge deal. And that's what goes on these blogs.
All right, well, to the story itself.
But set the record straight.
I will set the record straight.
Go right ahead.
What you have and what can be done, the way the Bethel government is set up, you have a sewer project that was approved, $19 million. Right. And other things that have been approved. You have the sewer and water were separate entities. The dump, which is the transfer station, is another separate entity. These entities, years ago, were allowed to be supported by your town general fund through referendum. What you need to do is go back and check your record, because that record, the meeting minutes, are the Bible. That's the law. Now, you've got a $19 million sewer project, and some of those transfers, I don't know specifically, I can, if I go in and look, believe me, I'll have an answer. And your current government in the town of Bethel doesn't even know how to check its own records.
Let me just hold you. So you think the current government in Bethel right now needs to be changed? Right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's why I'm running.
But
Marty,
here's the politics.
why would I be running if
I know,
I know,
but here's the politics of it. If you run and the Republicans run someone, you guys split the vote, and the current government that's in Bethel right now gets a pass.
Not necessarily.
Not.
Can I pipe in here?
Jump in.
By all means, it's your
Not
table.
necessarily, because the current administration has done very little when you look at their actual list of accomplishments, except promise a lot and do a heck of a lot of spinning. And frankly, there's a couple of things that they've done that are so irregular that if I told you about them, and you're a member of the Board of Finance in Ridgefield, I'd love to get your opinion.
Tell it. This is live television. We don't get any sponsors.
Well,
we're not worried about being, you know.
Suppose you had a friend who had a bike shop, and that particular friend, you offered that friend the use of an old train station, okay? It needed some
It was
repairs.
purchased for $1,000 by the Burke administration from the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
And the title on that deed transfer clearly states that it can be used for nothing except for the town of Bethel to lease it, rent it, and all monies must be used to maintain that property.
Right.
You bought a building for
Or
$1,000?
$1,000.
That's good. That's good public
Okay, so
service right there.
moving fast forward. So what happens here is you've got a bike shop that clearly wants to jump in on that train station deal. Why? Because that particular, it needs a lot of renovations. And he went out to get an SBA loan, okay? The type of loan he went and got was a 504 loan, which can only be used for renovations or constructions or upgrading of a facility for $160,000. One little problem. The SBA and the first lender, Fairfield County Bank, they required some documentation from the town, a lease agreement. And there's a clause in the lease agreement, there's several clauses in here that clearly suggest that if the business defaults on the loan, the first and second lender, being SBA, takes the building over. And I'll read it to you flat out. I mean, I'm not an attorney, you aren't, but guess what? Number 4, a lender or SBA shall be entitled to take possession of the premises covered by the lease for the purposes of operating...
The person that's getting the loan doesn't own the property.
Of course
He's
not.
Exactly.
It's a town-owned property.
Okay, so he can't put up the building as collateral on a loan?
The first selectman and the town council did, and they signed it. I mean, I can go on here. In the event that the lender or SBA shall take possession of the premises pursuant to this agreement, you know,
well,
it goes on and on. I mean, so mortal sin number 1 is without anyone's authority, he literally put up a town-owned piece of property worth $500,000 as collateral for an SBA loan that could only be gotten if it's used for construction or renovation purposes.
The phone number here is 438-2003, 438-2003. If you can shed any light on this, by all means call. Don't use the studio line. Please call.
If the state's attorney would like information, please call.
You can believe the first selectman's statements, or you can believe the actual document signed by the first selectman and the town council.
Well,
Okay?
hopefully, well, in future shows, we'll definitely make sure
Right.
that.
Well, let me move on.
Republican
You know, he's made a big deal out of the fact that the town, that no taxpayer dollars had been used to do any of the renovations. Now, there's a little problem with that, because in a Board of Finance meeting about 2 months ago, your current controller, who is also your treasurer, now, can you imagine in your town treasurer being hired as a controller, but instead of relegating, you know, resigning from his position, he maintains his position as a town treasurer and a controller. That's another problem, because your checks and balances is out the window.
Our charter,
Okay?
the town treasurer is in charge of the Board of Finance.
Can I just bottom line this?
Yes.
The bottom line
You guys
is-
got this town-owned building.
Right.
Yes.
You got a Bob Bike Shop wants to do his bike shop out of there. Bob, as a tenant in the building, goes to the SBA and says, loan me $160,000. I want to put bike racks in the shop. And then the town signs over as collateral the
building.
actually publicly owned building?
That's part of the lease
I mean,
agreement.
can you even do that?
You can't do
let
that.
me-
Well, I don't think you can either. So
The
something
people
doesn't
of
add up.
Bethel-
Let me
people
read
of
an
Bethel-
email that we FOI'd from the bike owner. And, you know, this isn't against the bike owner. We have nothing
I
against
have no,
him at all,
I
okay?
called him Bob, just as a...
Email from him to Matt. the bank wants to move forward with an SBA loan, but really I can't until I have a lease document and everything approved. And I think you mentioned that there is to be one more meeting for general approval of the lease before this is finalized, right?
But again,
So
you're dealing with a tenant. I mean, it's like you have an apartment, and you want to renovate the apartment, and you have a lease agreement.
But
and you say, I'll put on my lease agreement. There's no value there.
But here's the really egregious part that you'll appreciate. Okay. The man gets the $160,000 loan. We have had no accounting of whether he's actually spent the full $160,000 or how he spent it, because his permit shows that the estimated cost of all the renovations is $120,000. And again, these are documents that are all clearly attainable in the town hall. So where's the other $40,000 being used? Because the SBA 504 loan strictly forbids that particular loan from being used for working capital or inventory. So right now, we don't know whether or not any portion of that $160,000 has been used by that bike shop
but, I mean,
in violation of SBA loan.
Joe taxpayer out there, he doesn't care if the butcher, baker, or candlestick maker gets an SBA loan and what he spends his money on. Who the heck cares? The only tie-in is it's your $1,000 building that they put up as collateral.
No, there's more of a tie-in.
That's what I can't get my head around.
There's more of a tie-in. In the lease agreement specifically states that the $3,000 a month lease, there's a $1,900 deduction from that lease every month to pay for the principal and interest payment on the loan. In other words, the town is willing to deduct the $160,000 and the monthly loan payment of $1,900. So, in essence, in the lease document, they're saying the most they can get is $1,100. Furthermore, in the lease document, they're also saying that if there's any other repairs that are needed.
Perplexed.
You know what I heard? I heard there was an art teacher over at the high school, and she put up the high school as collateral for a loan because she's renovating she's buying new drapes, and the SBA bought it. So they got a school as collateral, and now they got another municipal building.
See, so the irregularities of it are really twofold. The idea of putting up town-owned property for collateral for a private SBA loan is a real problem with me. The other idea of not having any accountability of the $160,000 is another problem for me. And the third problem for me is we're paying the loan payment.
Has anybody filed a complaint in regards to this situation?
We have made several inquiries and several complaints to several agencies whose job it is to investigate municipal fraud, and including the FBI, because there's an agency in Bridgeport that handles specifically municipal fraud.
Yeah, but just before you start throwing the FBI around,
well, you have to. You know why? Yeah. Because the SBA is involved. That's the federal agency.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But I mean, anyone can, you could file a complaint against a ham sandwich with the FBI. So that doesn't really mean anything.
Fine. Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like it adds up. Now let me ask you this question: why are you guys running for? And you're running for the Board of Selectmen, and you're running for First Selectmen. And what you're saying is that the egregiousness of the current administration is so overwhelming, and they'll recognize your leadership and past performance in Bethel, that all the Republicans and everyone are going to come to your side, and that you're going to carry this election.
Bob, we're looking for a speechwriter. You want a job?
No, but I'm just saying, because as far as I'm concerned, it just doesn't add up.
Okay,
and then you have these Galdane guys like Al Robinson, the Democrats, with the
Marty, I'm going to assume you're a Republican, right?
I believe towns should live within their means. I believe
you're a Republican, right?
I am definitely a Republican.
Watch this. You've got, in this particular election, you've got a Democrat running, an incumbent Democrat, and you've got a lifelong Democrat.
Knickerbocker, right?
No, Knickerbocker. And you've got a lifelong Democrat
party endorsed
who was endorsed by a Republican who had just switched 5 days, become a Republican 5 days before the caucus. Okay, so what you have here is you have the voters basically choosing between two Democrat candidates.
Caller, are you there? Are you a representative of the SBA?
No. Good evening. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to thank Mr. Bob Burke and Mr. Bob Cernick for the military service. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, that's good. Listen, you should be commended for your military service, and really appreciate it.
Let me bring this up real fast because we're running out of time a little bit here.
We need more time.
We need a lot more time.
Hey, every Thursday, it's you're welcome.
Hold on. Let me get this in real quick. Thanks. 2 years ago, you had the election. You lost. A lot of people on the Republican side, Paul Improto was quoted in the News Times criticizing you, saying that you were the spoiler. I think his quote was like, Bob got 1,200 votes, and that's why Larry Kravis lost.
Exactly.
What do you do?
Okay,
what would you say to those who are saying
hold on.
that you are, by interjecting yourself in this race, being a spoiler again, and basically handing Knickerbocker another win? Because you know you have a certain base votes that you know you're going to get. No matter what, and people are saying, well, because you're in this race, the Republicans are going to lose again, and that's why there's such bad blood between the Republicans and you right now.
Do you believe that?
I'm asking you. It's
But
for
do
the
you
public.
First, just for the public, do you believe that?
It's not for me to say yes or
Okay,
no.
what is for me to say is this.
I just want to get your
the
opinion
people
on
of
this.
Bethel, the people of Bethel, not the party dogs, not the boys in the back room, they do not have the right to determine what the people want. I believe in liberty and the freedom of the people more than anything else in the world. I was thanked for my military service. That's why I did my military service. Spoiler, no. Choice, yes.
Caller, you're on the air. You have a question for the candidate?
I do. Marty, it's Todd from Bethel. I'm actually a neighbor of Bob Cernick. I got a question.
How is he as a neighbor? Does he shovel his walk and rake his leaves and he's a good neighbor?
Marty, I expect him to shovel my walk. No, really, look, I'm a Republican, registered Republican, have always been on the conservative side. Guys, how do you, if you expect to get reelected, how do you not split the vote? Because I got to tell you, I believe that's what happened last time. I want conservatives in there. I want fiscally responsible folks in there. I can't comment on the bike deal. I don't know enough about it, but it makes some sense. But again, guys, how do you get the conservative vote?
Here's a thought. Let me put it back on you. What about the Republicans coming around and saying, hey, you know, maybe these guys need a little a second look. We sit down at the table. We bury the hatchet, not in each other's skulls, but we bury the hatchet, and maybe the Republican Party comes around. What do you think?
They were given that opportunity at the caucus.
What do you think? Caller.
Marty, I'm all for it. The town is so divided right now because of the last election. My challenge is back to these guys. How do they reprove Mr. Burke's credibility?
All right. Well, thanks for the call. Thank you. That's a good call.
Let me give you credibility. I raised taxes 1.34% in 4 years. The current administration has raised it almost 7%. The gentleman that is running as a Republican that was the chairman of the Board of Finance and then the third selectman voted not to split the budget and voted for every increase he could while he was chairman of the Board of Finance.
And that's something I wanted to bring up because Mr. Cleary was a Democrat under your watch, and I recall a spirited exchange you and
every meeting
had with Mr. Cleary, in which I remember the Jason Bartlett episode with the $500,000, and he wanted to get his name on the agenda, and that didn't transpire. How is it that somebody who was just an ardent supporter of Democratic philosophy suddenly was picked by the Republicans to run for first selectman?
Stop him.
To stop Bob Burke. If you remember, and what I was going to say to you in the early comment, the comments that Mr. Improta made after I was elected in the Danbury News-Times called 1,306 people stupid for voting for me.
Unbelievable.
Stupid for voting for me because he is the chairman of the Republican Town Committee, and he runs Bethel.
I've asked him or anyone in that town committee.
That is a dangerous philosophy.
Yeah. But they have no platform. They have absolutely, you don't know what these people stand for. If they're willing to put up a Democrat to run at the top of their ticket, what in God's name do they stand for? And to answer my neighbor, the Republican, it's really simple. It's really simple. It's not about party this year. Your choice is 2 Democrats or a Republican, and I'm also a registered Republican. And what are we doing? We're doing something that's historic. The Tea Party has always more or less supported Republican candidates. We are literally starting the next. We're taking the Tea Party to the next level, which is to start a party. That's what we're doing. Because at this point in time, both major parties, both major parties at the national, state, and local level are, as far as I'm concerned, really just one party. No. They may pose and they may try and act like they're different.
Is Congress working for you?
No.
Caller, you're on the air. You have a question?
Yes, I do. Mr. Burke and Mr. Cernak talk about Matt Knickerbocker being a Democrat. Well, actually, he was a Republican who changed to Democrat. Then Mr. Cleary was a Democrat who changed Republican. But when Mr. Burke first ran, he changed from a Democrat. He was a lifelong Democrat. So how does he answer that?
Well, I think...
I said that earlier in the show. I was a Democrat for many years.
Bob, wouldn't you agree that we recommend all Democrats that have seen the error of their ways and want to come around and see things clearly?
I love being back on the table.
They've tried that, you know, tax the rich, Robin Hood, a government will make everything fine from cradle to grave. And they see it doesn't work. And if they just come to their senses and come back, they will find open arms in the Republican Party. Wouldn't you agree?
Let me explain this. I'm Bobby Burke. I'm from Bethel, Connecticut. I love Bethel, Connecticut. And I'm probably not a Democrat. I'm probably not a Republican. I believe in liberty in the town of Bethel, and I believe this with all of my heart. Washington, D.C. can be fixed from the kitchen table in Bethel, Connecticut. Determined people working together can accomplish anything. How's that for some rhetoric?
You know what? Nothing gets done if both parties are in unity. What you're doing there is you're opening up the barn door for abuse of power, and it's happened during this administration. There's been no one offering any checks and balances or opposition to anything. You've got the Republican selectmen voting virtually 100% of the time with his two Democrat selectmen. Why even have them there as a minority representative? So in other words, in this town right now, you have a situation, a culture, that literally is against opposing views.
And who suffers?
They demonize people who are opposing
the taxpayer suffers.
You know, and that's wrong.
The constituent suffers.
There's something wrong with that.
All right, here's my 2 cents. You guys got to...
I want a nickel.
I'll give you my nickel cents. You got to get in a smoke-filled room somewhere. You got to sit down with these guys, and you got to come to some agreement. You got to come out of that smoke-filled room and say, look, we're together on this, and this is our candidate. It's been done in politics for years. It can happen.
No,
I'm telling you. Otherwise, you have a situation that's called rule or ruin. That's the thing. You're either going to rule or you're going to ruin.
The Republican Town Committee chairman, okay, one of the reasons we're running is because of some of the comments made by Paul and Proda. They are full of vitriol.
Listen, politics is a contact sport. You know, man up.
Not at that level.
Listen, man up. You know, if you don't look.
You know what? It's one thing to be political.
It would be nice if it was a contact.
Well, it is a contact sport. What did Harry Truman say?
Yeah.
If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Right.
So they said some bad stuff about you. Get over it.
No.
All right?
When it crosses into a personal side, that's a whole different matter.
You ever read what they say on his blog? It's unbelievable.
It's just another year in Bethel.
Yeah.
Another year in Bethel.
But the bottom line is, it's about issues and who can handle the infrastructure. We've got $10 million worth of infrastructure that needs to be put in place. This man knows how to do it.
Plus, you got some guy in a bike shop that's,
well, enough about him. The problem is the guy that put him there.
Contact info? Yeah, any contact and website, anything like that?
At this point, no.
We'll have it short.
Listen, you want to get in touch with Bob Burke, walk down Main Street in Bethel, say, where's Bob, and they'll point to him. You can go talk to him. That's how it works. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you very much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Thank you for letting us use your table. I appreciate that, too. And you guys are welcome at any time. Next week, and Al doesn't know this, but Al's going to be hosting the show next week. Al, who are you having on?
I can come back, Al.
Al's staff's going to get back to you. I just want to thank you again. Have him come back. And Democrat, Republican, who knows what he is? You could have him. It's fine.
You guys can have a debate.
We'll definitely have a debate right here. You can run, but you can't hide. Thank you for joining the Marty Heiser Show. Last thought, Bob?
Next Wednesday, we're on the Kevin Gallagher Show.
Kevin Gallagher. He's making the rounds, which is good, because it's going to get hot, and it's going to be fun. It's beautiful. All right, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week on the Marty Heiser Show, and Al's going to have something. I can't wait to see what it is. See you next week. Thank you.